All right, welcome to another episode of the Athletic Development Show, proudly brought to you by Iron Edge. Today's a little bit of a different flavour. I'm just going to talk to you a little bit. I'm not sure how long this is going to go, but I want to talk about something, a little bit of debate I opened up on the socials this week, which was I did a post about what I call trick shot strength and conditioning, which is probably one of the things I hate more than anything. It's this ridiculous bias towards doing, things with all these different implements and these really complicating, finicky things that look really, it's like the classic was once saw someone on a BOSU ball with chains around the neck doing a trap bar deadlift. It's like the chains aren't even working. The BOSU ball means that you're negating the power production. It just looks cool and interesting. I even saw one once where someone was doing a deadlift and then being punched in the stomach at the top of the rep to engage their core better. And it's just this crazy thing that we're seeing where instead of advancing and developing, and we are advancing and developing in lots of areas, and I don't want to sound like this old grinchy guy, but there's this definite, whatever the opposite of evolution is, where we're devolving with certain exercises. And the biggest thing is that there's this undertow, this gravitational pull within Instagram towards the confrontational, the extreme, the sexy, the new, the exciting. And what it means is that people that occupy extreme positions actually become famous a lot more than people that say reasonable things. Because if I do a post about a moderately intelligent, reasonable thing that's quite effective, people will look at that and go, oh yeah, seems legit. And they might like it. But if I do some ridiculous extreme post, someone's going to jump on it, oh, that's the most dangerous thing ever, you're a fucking idiot. And all of a sudden, bang, we're away and there's a debate. And that actually drives my engagement. And so a lot of people are gaming the system at the expense of the athletes. And to me, there's a responsibility. If you have some level of profile, there's a responsibility to actually educate in a positive way rather than just make your money out of the equation. And so one of the things that's come out of this bias towards confrontation and taking extreme positions is this incredibly stupid position, that this absolute statement that there is no such thing as a bad exercise. Like, it's like saying there's no such thing as a bad car. Like, there's clearly good cars and bad cars. It's really obvious. A Mercedes-Benz is a better car than a Niki Lauda or a Daewoo. Like, that's a fact. It's fascinating. But what we see then is if you extend that argument, and this is what people do, is they go, well, there's no such thing as a bad exercise because there's no science that proves that it's bad. If you extend that argument, then what you have is there's also kind of no such thing as a good exercise. And that it's just everything is totally subjective. So there might be a case for a certain exercise. And yes, things are subjective. But, in the case last week of that video of the guy tearing his knee apart with that terrible exercise, the layout reverse weighted Nordic thing that he was doing, that's just a flat out a bad exercise. So I thought that I would dissect what makes for a bad exercise, and then perhaps talk a little about what makes for great exercise and go through a few of what I reckon are brilliant exercises. And so the way I look at it is, I think the number one reason I think can be a bad exercise is that if it is fundamentally toxic. So I think of all exercise and workouts as analogous to meals. So a meal should, number one, be non-toxic, number two, nutritious, and number three, tasty. Because it doesn't matter if you're serving up the best boiled chicken breast and broccoli that's organically raised and all those things. It's really non-toxic, really nutritious, but if no one eats it, it doesn't matter. So it is important. It has some spice on it. But I think the lens to look at the bad exercises, number one, is that thing toxic? And, the classic toxic exercise to me is a burpee, because, best case scenario, you get a bit puffed and dizzy. Worst case scenario, you do a nasty wear and tear injury to knees and back. And the thing is, it's not like you do it once and your back just explodes. It's not like you do it once and you suddenly get this extreme knee soreness. There's some people it does actually happen to. But it's that thing of everything is fine until it isn't. So that guy doing the reverse Nordic layout thing, and I want to be crystal clear, reverse Nordics are brilliant. Because of the way they're set up, they're very safe, very good, self-limiting, and a great exercise for quad durability. So they're really good. But that particular version of it was just because you had the pivot point of the sissy squat mechanism actually pushing the tibia forward. So it was as though you were trying to snap a twig over your leg. Like that's bad. But reverse Nordics are fine. But yeah, you have these movements that have this high orthopedic cost, but the cost isn't payable instantaneously. So it might be, like that was probably the 10th time that guy had done that exercise. Like he got away with it the first 9 times. So everything's fine until it isn't, I suppose. And so in terms of orthopedic cost, there's burpees. For a lot of people, there's really, really deep squats, like Olympic style squats are actually not great for their hips. I'll never forget, I had an athlete came along to see me as maybe a 14-year-old, and his dad was a really serious Olympic lifting coach. So a real ass to grass, chasing deep loaded squats. And he came along and I just looked at him squat and I said, look, you're actually not built for Ollie lifting. You're a great basketballer, but your dimensions don't suit this. This is going to cause you problems. And I bumped into him maybe 4 years ago. And the dad, to his credit, I bumped him at a gym. And the dad was like, yeah, look, I really should have listened to you. You were so right. He's actually not playing basketball anymore. He completely ground up his hip and now he's got permanent hip problems. And it was just like, yeah, like that was fine for the first 3.5 years after that. And then, it bites you on the ass. So orthopedic cost, it's a Mike Boyle concept. It's, there's rewards, but it's also an orthopedic cost of certain activities. And burpees, kipping chin-ups, I think are a really good one with a bad one that is, with a high orthopedic cost. And Russian twists, they're another example. So those ones are really obvious where the juice is not worth the squeeze in any way, shape or form. They are just problematic exercises with a tremendous downside and a negligible upside, and that the orthopedic cost there, it can be irreversible. You can create damage to structures that you can't just rest your way out of. And so they're the most bad exercises. Like you can't just rest your way out of a snapped tibia that well. The next one is what I would call bad exercises because of, for want of a better term, their anti-sport characteristics. So there's certain, if you try and mimic throwing, for instance, with cable work, you can actually occupy this uncanny valley where it's not quite the sport skill and it's not quite strength training. So all you're doing is kind of altering your kinematics so that you are now just making yourself slightly worse at throwing, but not demonstrably stronger either. And so I would call those anti-sport. And the classic, there's a great one of a functional, and I hate the way the word functional strength training has been ruined by some of these guys. A functional strength training guy doing like kind of a push-pull boxing motion, standing on a Bosu ball. Now the reality is, anyone who knows anything about fighting is that what you're trying to do is translate kinetic energy, take force from the floor, transmit it through, and deliver it with your fist. So the idea that you would get better at that by standing on a Bosu ball is just ludicrous, because it's the antithesis of what your sport needs. So there's a whole category of anti-sport. And so throwing things, boxing things, a whole bunch of things where people put the label sport specific and functional training on it, but actually it's just ever so slightly making you worse at your sport. Again, not as catastrophic as the ones with high orthopedic cost, because you can stop doing them and within a few months it'll be as though you never did them, which is really good, but still to be avoided because they're fundamentally a waste of time. And then the last category is just what I would call sand. And so the way I think of it is, you have big rocks. It's not just, I didn't invent this. This is well established beyond me. But you've got big rocks, pebbles, and then sand. And so big rocks are the important things that you need to get in your workout that are actually going to really drive the results, the 80-20 of it. And then you've got your smaller rocks, and then your pebbles and your sand. And so all are important, but the sand is the least important. It's kind of like the 1%ers or less. And the thing is, though, you can easily accidentally make your program have a bit too much sand in it. And so even though in isolation all of the exercises you put in might not be bad exercises, in fact, we have a rating system that we use where it's AAA, which is huge bang for buck, relatively easy learning curve, and very good risk reward. So AAA exercises, the juice is 100% worth the squeeze. They are movements that are going to really stimulate positive change in the body of the athlete. And then you've got AA, and they're still quite good. They might be a little harder to teach, but they're still really good. And then you've got A. This is Jacob gave us this idea. His idea from the rating systems for credit ratings. And then we go D and then F. And so D is an exercise that's really not that great. And then F is that's actually just actively dangerous, and there's literally no circumstance in which we would ever do it. So burpee for me, unless you come to me and say you're entering a burpee competition and you're going to win $1 million, then I'm like, all right, we're going to do some burpees. But yeah, the sand stuff is interesting because it might be that it's merely D-grade stuff, but you've just got a lot of it in there, and it just kind of jams the program, but it burns calories and energy and takes attention. So those are the three ways I reckon you can have a bad exercise. If we switch gears though, let's talk about good exercise. And I think as the world is more entranced with shiny stuff, particularly in our Instagram world, the opportunity is even stronger than ever to really stand out with great exercise selection. So the right exercise for the right person in the right place is something that you can increasingly get more benefit out of than ever before, because you can stand out from the crowd a little bit. And so I've just got a few exercises that I love, and I'll be interested in hearing on the socials, you guys, the ones that you love as well. And I'm going to talk about why I reckon they're such a big deal and why we love them here at Core Advantage so much. So AAA movements, highly effective, relatively easy to teach, and they have an element where possible of what I call pokeyoke. Pokeyoke is a Japanese automotive engineering term, and what it's about is it's about this idea of, if you're having a panel that goes to the right-hand side of the car, in the design process, they've got a little nodule that actually prevents you from accidentally putting it to the left side. So pokeyoke exercises are ones where the setup of the exercise is such that it's hard to do it wrong, and they're wonderful. So if you can get that in, that's AAA gold plated. That's really good. But some of the favorite AAA ones, Dumbbell Bench. It's such a great movement. It's got a user-defined path of motion. So the shoulder's a rotational spiral diagonal joint. So if you can have it go through a user-defined path of motion where your shoulder gets to go where it wants to go rather than where a barbell or a machine wants to go, that is super valuable. It's fundamentally self-limiting. So you can, with a barbell bench press, I could put more weight than I could handle on the bar. I could unrack it, and I've seen this happen in real life, and only find out that I couldn't lift it halfway down as it's starting to tear my pec off the bone. And if you've ever heard someone tear their pec off the bone, it's kind of a blood-curdling scream. Not what you want, because you can inappropriately load yourself. It's not self-limiting. Dumbbell, very self-limiting. You can't pick up, you can't get a weight into a position that's heavier than you can handle. And it's the same with a trap bar deadlift, for instance. So you're 30% roughly stronger eccentrically than concentrically. So you can't pick a weight up that you can't pick up on a trap bar deadlift. So that's part of why it's such an effective exercise. But yeah, so dumbbell bench press, super good. Push-ups are amazing. I'm more than ever in love with loaded split squat variations. I don't think I gave them enough love early on in my career. It's one of those things where I'm short and with great dorsiflexion. I'm short, I've got great dorsiflexion, and I've got great shoulder mobility. So back squats suit me really well. But they actually don't suit that many people that well. And so those loaded split squat variations, whether it's a front foot elevated split squat, rear foot elevated split squat, whether it's, one that I absolutely love at the moment, I put footage up in my story today, is Rach Brewster doing a Hatfield split squat. So Hatfield, you'll see it if you go look in the video, but it's where you've got a safety bar squat, which allows you to load a whole bunch of weight on, and then you're hanging onto handles and then dropping back into a single leg. So it's kind of like a functional version of a leg press squat in a way. It's a really good movement, very safe, super effective, really high hip quad load, but relatively low axial compression. Brilliant exercise. So totally AAA, and it's a little exciting and interesting too. So it's a bit tasty as well, which is great. And yeah, exercise like a squat row. So a squat row is just such a good exercise. You've got non-axial load as an anti-flexion component, so your back's having to work to stop you from folding in half. You get a bit of a quad isometric workout, plus you're getting really nice scapular retraction. So you look at that and you're like, that's just a great exercise. Demonstrably superior for an athlete to a T-bar row, like so much better. It's not that they're equal. For some people, there might be some circumstances where the T-bar is better, but I really would struggle to find that example in the sports world. And then you've got things like single leg RDLs. They're amazing. I like RDLs, nothing wrong with an RDL, but the idea that you can get double the load in the hamstring with half the load through the back, you can stress the body in a similar way to the way sport does, i.e. one leg at a time. That just pushes it over the line. So it's probably that a single leg RDL, even with hanging on to something, is going to be superior in many ways to an RDL, whereas RDL might be AA, or a single leg might be AAA. And then there's other ones that are novel and are still really good. So I think often people can be like, oh, it's only the old exercises. It's like, no, there's some good new ones. Sled push, it's been around for a little while, but it's a great exercise. Tremendous load. Really, the vectors line up really nicely with sprinting. Almost idiot proof. So really, really low burden of coaching and technical. It's pretty pokey-okey. It's pretty hard to stuff it up. And then simple things like a range of motion squat. So for change direction. So I love just a unloaded, deep range, slightly wide stance squat, just to give someone the ability to really have the capacity to operate and exert force in a low hip position. That can be huge. That can be one of the things that makes every other element of your game better. So that's just a little sampling of favorite exercises, and I'm going to get into the habit of starting to post about these on the weekly as well. So that'll start to be a little bit of a series that we build up of just really good AAA exercises with video as well, so you'll see them. The thing is though, and this is sort of my closing thought on it, the thing is the AAA exercises are harder to sell in that quick 6-second, 2-second impression, because you've seen them before. They're not novel. They don't look that interesting sometimes because they're not that risky. So I think that we are interested in sort of risky looking elaborate setups. So what that means is that you have to be better with your sales skills. It's actually easier. It's counterintuitively, it's easier to sell shitty new exercises than brilliant established ones, because that bias towards novelty really kicks in. And you have to work that little bit harder to make the sale. And I think the thing is with that when you're making that sale, it's not about the features of the exercise so much. It's about what is the outcome the athlete is going to get. So you're constantly selling that athlete on, okay, the benefits of this for you are going to be this, this, and this. So people tend to focus on the features. Well, Sales 101 is focus on the advantages and benefits and less on the features. So I think that focus can really help a lot. I hope that helps. I hope that's of some interest. I got great feedback the last time I did one of these, but that doesn't mean it always has to be great. So if you've got other things you'd like me to talk about, let me know. And if you've got further feedback, that would be great. And we'll see you back here next week with a guaranteed guest other than me. All right. See you guys. Bye.
Okay, hope you enjoyed that episode. You'll find all the relevant show notes over at coreadvantage.com.au. Also on the website, you can find more information about our athletic development services, education, our short courses, and everything else we're up to. So that's coreadvantage.com.au. Cheers, guys. See ya.